She said it almost in passing, her voice steady but softer than usual, as though the words weren't meant for anyone else to hear. This meeting stays between us. It should have been just another late evening at the office. Fluorescent lights humming faintly overhead, papers scattered across the long mahogany table, the city pressing its neon glow against the tall windows. But the way she looked at me across the dim room, not as a superior speaking to an assistant, but as a woman acknowledging the presence of a man, made everything shift. Her name carried weight in the company, but to me she was something else entirely. She was mid-40s, composed, and elegant in the way that drew silence around her. Even in stillness, she seemed untouchable. Yet tonight, her eyes lingered too long on mine. I wasn't supposed to notice. Or maybe I wasn't supposed to admit that I noticed. But the air had thickened between us, and every time she moved, the tilt of her head, the brush of her hair against her cheek, the way she adjusted the cuff of her blouse, I felt it. I had stayed behind because she asked me to. Just for a few minutes, she said. Minutes that had stretched, now, into something more. The office was quiet except for the ticking of the clock, each second amplifying the closeness we hadn't named. I pretended to focus on the reports in front of me, though my eyes betrayed me, stealing glances at her hand resting against the table, fingers tapping lightly in thought. Her nails caught the low light. She shifted, and her sleeve slipped back slightly, showing the curve of her wrist. Such a small thing, yet I couldn't look away. When I reached across to hand her a file, our fingers brushed. Just a brief contact, skin against skin, but it sent a jolt through me sharp enough that I almost withdrew too quickly. She didn't. She let it linger half a second longer than necessary, and when our eyes met, she didn't look away. Her lips parted slightly, as though she might say something, but then closed again. Silence filled the space where her words should have been. I realized my heart was beating too fast, too loud. I shifted in my seat, unsure if I should break the quiet or let it consume us both. She solved that for me. This meeting, she said again, this time slower, her voice dipping just enough to feel different, stays between us. The words hung there, not as instruction, but as invitation. I watched the way her throat moved as she swallowed, the way her gaze dipped for the briefest moment before returning to mine. I didn't think. I just leaned forward, my voice lower than I intended. Then let's lock the door. Her breath caught, a sound barely there, but enough. Her hand, resting on the table, stilled completely. For a heartbeat, we didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't dare. The door down the hall clicked suddenly. Footsteps. Someone moving closer. The tension shattered but didn't disappear. It only pressed harder, dangerous now, because we had no control over it. She glanced at the door, then back at me, her expression unreadable. But her eyes said everything I wasn't brave enough yet to speak. And just as the footsteps paused outside, her hand inched across the table again, closer to mine. The footsteps faded, leaving only silence again. Neither of us moved for a moment, both pretending to return to the scattered papers, though nothing on the table mattered anymore. She adjusted her blouse, straightening as if reclaiming her authority. Yet when her eyes lifted back to me, something softer broke through. I'd always wondered what her life looked like outside these walls, the polished exterior, the calm precision. But now, this close, I could see the faint weariness at the edge of her eyes. Lines that told a story no meeting agenda could hide. You're too young to be staying this late, she said lightly, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. I almost laughed, but instead asked, and you? You're here every night. Her lips curved faintly, though not into a smile. That's different. She hesitated, then added, I don't have anyone waiting for me. The words lingered heavier than she intended. For the first time, I realized how empty her evenings might be. A quiet apartment, wine poured into a single glass, the echo of her own footsteps down a hallway no one else walked. Something stirred in me. Not pity, never that, but recognition. I thought of my own nights, my own sense of drifting. I was younger, yes, but not immune to loneliness. I don't either, I admitted. The confession slipped out before I could weigh it. Her eyes held mine longer than they should have. She shifted closer to reach for another folder, though the movement seemed unnecessary. I caught the faint scent of her perfume, subtle, expensive, warm. She stopped beside me, her arm brushing mine as she leaned in. The closeness was unbearable in its restraint. My hand twitched, almost rising to touch hers, but I forced it still. She was my superior, old enough to be judged for even standing this close to me. And me, I was reckless just for wanting it. Her hand hovered above the page I was holding, fingers grazing the back of mine as if by accident. But she didn't move them right away. Her skin was cool, delicate, yet charged with something that made the room feel suddenly smaller. I looked up, too close. Her breath brushed against my cheek when she exhaled. For a moment, she seemed ready to step back, to reclaim the distance. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, almost like it wasn't meant for me. "This is dangerous." I should have agreed. I should have nodded, let the silence dissolve it. But my voice betrayed me. Then why can't I stop thinking about it? Her hand finally withdrew, yet the warmth of her touch remained. She turned away quickly, pretending to search through the files, her composure cracking only in the faint tremor of her hand. The office was still silent, but between us, something had shifted, something that couldn't be undone. And when she finally turned back to me, her gaze caught mine with a gravity that said what neither of us dared put into words. The air between us was already too charged when the sudden vibration of her phone shattered the silence. It buzzed against the table, screen lighting up with a name she didn't answer. She glanced at it, then quickly flipped it over, face down, as though even seeing it made her uneasy. I caught the faintest crack in her mask, a quick press of her lips, her shoulders drawing tight. Whoever it was, she didn't want to explain. "Another late call?" I asked softly, trying to sound casual. She shook her head. "Not important." But her tone betrayed her. The lie hung there, and instead of pushing, I let it. Yet the sound of the phone seemed to pull us closer, like a shared secret we hadn't agreed to keep. When she leaned over to gather papers, our arms brushed again. This time neither of us moved. She froze for a breath, and I could hear the faint rhythm of her breathing shift. I leaned slightly toward her, not enough to be reckless, but enough that I could see the fine strands of hair falling loose from behind her ear, the curve of her cheek in the low light. She turned her head, meeting my gaze, and for a moment the whole office seemed to tilt around us. It would have been so easy to close the space. Just lean forward, let the silence break with something inevitable. My pulse hammered, my lips parted, and then the door handle rattled. Both of us jerked back instantly. Her hand snapped to the papers, mine to the nearest file, as though work had consumed us all along. The door cracked open. "Still here?" A colleague's voice, cheerful, unaware. He leaned halfway inside, holding a stack of folders. Figured the lights were just left on. Her voice was steady, professional again. "I needed these finished tonight." "He's helping." The colleague nodded. "Of course. Don't stay too late." The door shut. Only when his footsteps faded did I realize how close she still was. Her knee brushed mine under the table. Neither of us shifted away. "That was close," I murmured. She gave a quiet laugh, though her eyes stayed fixed on the door. "Too close." Her voice betrayed more than she intended. Not just fear of being caught, but fear of herself, of us. I watched her hands fold neatly over the documents, though her fingers tightened, knuckles pale. I wanted to say something, to ask why she kept pulling close only to retreat. Instead, I simply reached out, slow, deliberate. My fingertips grazed hers where they rested on the table. She didn't move. Her eyes finally met mine again. The silence stretched, breaking into small, fragile beats, a breath, a glance, the faint tremor of restraint. I leaned closer, close enough that her perfume wrapped around me, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath graze my lips. She didn't move away, but just before the space closed, she whispered, almost desperately, "We can't." The words stopped me, yet her hand didn't pull away from mine. Instead, her grip tightened, and in that moment, resistance bound us tighter than surrender ever could. The office felt different the next evening, quieter, heavier, as if the walls remembered what had nearly happened the night before. I told myself I'd go straight home, but when her message came, "Stay. I need you on this project," I didn't hesitate. She was already there when I entered, leaning against the table, arms folded across her chest. She didn't look up right away. When she finally did, her eyes searched mine longer than they should have, as if deciding whether to keep something locked inside or let it spill out. "You shouldn't be here," she said at last. Her voice was calm, but the tremor beneath it betrayed her. "Then why did you ask me?" The question hit harder than I meant it to. Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. Instead, she exhaled and rubbed at her temple, a gesture more vulnerable than anything I'd seen from her in months. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. You keep pulling me in, and then you push me away. Which one is it? Her eyes flickered, torn between command and confession. For the first time, she looked less like my boss and more like a woman caught in something she couldn't control. You're too young, she whispered. People will talk. They'll think what? My voice dropped, frustration threading through. That I want you? That I can't stop thinking about you. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was suffocating. She pressed her lips together, but her breath came uneven now. I moved closer. Close enough that the edge of the table pressed against my hip. Close enough that the warmth of her body seeped into the space between us. Her hand twitched at her side, as though she might reach for me. Instead, I lifted mine, brushing a stray strand of hair back from her face. My fingers lingered against her cheek longer than they should have. She closed her eyes, just briefly, as if surrendering to the touch before forcing herself to open them again. This isn't fair, she murmured. I don't care, I said, softer now but raw. The weight of it hung in the air. She leaned back against the table, her hand gripping the edge, knuckles pale. I stepped closer still, until there was hardly space between us. Her breath hitched. My lips hovered near hers, so close I could feel the warmth radiating from them. But I didn't close the distance. Say the word, I whispered, and I'll stop. Her eyes burned into mine, torn between fear and need. Seconds stretched. The hum of the office lights faded into nothing. Her hand finally released the table's edge and moved, not away, but upward, resting lightly against my chest. The contact sent a shiver through me, and the weight of her touch told me everything her words could not. She leaned in, breath trembling against my lips. And then, the door clicked open. The door swung halfway open, and her colleague from the night before stepped inside again, papers tucked under his arm. Oh, he said, pausing mid-step. His eyes darted between us, me standing far too close, her hand still against my chest. The room froze around that single detail. She pulled her hand back instantly, clearing her throat. Is there something you need? Her tone was clipped, but the faint tremor in it betrayed her. He lingered, eyes narrowing in suspicion. Just thought you should know. People are starting to wonder why you stay so late. With him. His glance flicked toward me. Heat climbed my neck. She said nothing, only pressed the papers flat against the table as if grounding herself. The colleague gave a half-smile, not kind, not cruel, just knowing, and set the files down before leaving again. The door shut, but the damage remained. I turned to her. He knows. Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp but shaken. No, he suspects. That's different. Different how? I stepped closer despite myself. The whispers will start. Maybe they already have. Her jaw tightened. She moved past me quickly, brushing against my arm as she paced toward the window. The contact was accidental, but it lingered, sparking in the silence. You don't understand, she said, voice low. This could ruin me. I've built everything on being untouchable, and one rumor, one careless look, and it all collapses. I followed her, stopping just behind. And me? Do you think I haven't thought about what people will say? About how they'll look at me, at us? She turned sharply, closer than I expected. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with something rawer. Fear, anger, longing knotted together. Then why are you still here? She asked. The question cut through me. My answer was reckless, but true. Because I don't care about them. I care about you. For a heartbeat. She didn't move. Then her shoulders softened, her breath catching as if she'd been holding it all along. The distance between us closed without thought. Her trembling hand brushed mine, fingertips grazing as if testing whether the world would fall apart if we touched again. It didn't. So she let her hand linger, sliding against my palm. My chest tightened as I closed my fingers around hers. This is madness, she whispered, stepping closer, so close the heat of her body pressed faintly against mine. Then let's be mad, I whispered back. Her laugh was quiet, shaky, and then she leaned into me, her forehead resting just against my cheek, her breath unsteady. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. But my arm rose instinctively, resting against her back, holding her there as though letting go would undo everything. Her voice broke the silence, soft, resigned. We can't go back now. And for the first time, neither of us tried to. Her words, "We can't go back now," hung in the air long after she spoke them. She didn't move from my arms, didn't step away. Instead, she stayed close, forehead brushing my cheek as though the smallest shift might unravel everything. The room was too quiet. The hum of the lights, the faint buzz of the city outside, all of it seemed to fade beneath the thundering rhythm of our breaths. I pulled back just enough to see her face. Her eyes flickered with something restless, torn between surrender and restraint. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. "Tell me to stop," I whispered. My voice was lower than I intended, thick with the weight of wanting. Her gaze fell to my mouth, then darted away. "I can't," she whispered back. The admission cracked something open in me. My hand lifted, hesitant at first, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingers grazed her temple, then traced down to her jaw. She leaned into the touch, her breath unsteady, and for a moment it felt inevitable. But even as I leaned closer, she caught my wrist, holding it in place against her cheek. Her grip trembled. "If we do this," she said softly, "it changes everything." I swallowed hard. Maybe it already has. Our eyes locked. No masks, no careful distance. Only the truth neither of us could deny anymore. Then she exhaled sharply, as though releasing weeks of restraint, and closed the space between us. Her lips found mine, hesitant at first, a stolen moment testing the line we had sworn not to cross. But when I responded, the hesitation dissolved. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, while mine gripped her waist, afraid of letting go. The kiss was not neat or perfect. It was trembling, desperate, almost clumsy with everything unsaid. The taste of it was not just want but regret, fear, release, all tangled together. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us stepped back. Her forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard. "This is madness," she whispered again, but softer now, almost like a confession of relief. "Maybe," I said, brushing my thumb across her cheek, "but it's real." Her eyes closed briefly, and when they opened, I saw no more walls. Just her. Just us. She leaned into me again, not with urgency this time, but with a quiet certainty. My arms wrapped around her fully, holding her as though the world outside no longer mattered. And in that stillness, we both knew. Whatever happened next, we understood each other now. Completely. We stayed there for a long time, the quiet wrapping around us like a blanket neither of us wanted to shake off. Her head rested lightly against my shoulder, my arm still holding her close. For once, there were no reports between us, no titles, no careful walls, just the warmth of her body, steady against mine. "I should be stronger than this," she murmured finally, her voice muffled against my shirt. I tilted my head toward her, speaking softly. "Stronger doesn't mean pretending you don't feel anything." She pulled back slightly, enough to look at me. Her eyes, usually sharp and guarded, now looked softer, almost tired from the weight she'd carried alone. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I've spent years being in control, building something people respect. And then you walk in, 20 years younger, and suddenly She trailed off, her breath unsteady. I caught her hand, threading my fingers through hers. "Suddenly you're human," I finished for her. Her lips curved, not quite a smile, more like relief breaking through. She squeezed my hand gently, as if testing whether I'd let go. I didn't. The age gap had always been there, unspoken but looming. Tonight it felt less like a wall and more like a bridge, something fragile but crossable if we were both willing. "You'll regret this," she said quietly, though the words lacked conviction. "Then I'll regret it," I answered. "But at least I'll regret something real." Her laugh was soft, breathless, the kind that escapes when defenses finally fall. She leaned closer again, resting her forehead against mine. "You shouldn't make promises you can't keep." "Then let me start with something I can." I lifted her hand and pressed a slow kiss against her fingers. She inhaled sharply, but didn't pull away. For the first time, I felt her relax fully, as though surrendering wasn't a weakness but a relief. She shifted, settling into me, her other hand sliding against my chest. We didn't need more words. Just the quiet rhythm of breathing together. The warmth of her forehead pressed lightly to my lips. The intertwining of fingers that promised more than anything spoken aloud could. Whatever came tomorrow, whispers, judgment, doubts, none of it could erase this moment. I held her tighter, And she let me. The city outside hummed with its endless motion, but in that office, time seemed to pause, letting us exist in the kind of closeness that didn't demand answers, only presence. And when she finally whispered, almost like a vow, "Don't let go," I knew I wouldn't. Not tonight. Not ever.